Someone make it make sense.
Probably a couple.
All right, guys, it's happened, and it happened pretty quickly, if you ask me. The Commonwealth has already filed their response to the defense's motion to dismiss. This just came out a couple hours ago. I do believe it's time-stamped here, July 12th. I can't see what time. But yeah, this just happened. So we are going to see what the heck they have to say for themselves. Shout out to Candace. Happy to see you. All right, so let's get into it. Hi, Black Widow. Happy to see you also, my friend. All right. So Commonwealth versus Karen Reed. The Commonwealth's opposition to defendant's post-trial motion to dismiss. Now comes the Commonwealth in opposition to the defendant's post-trial motion to dismiss her indictments for second-degree murder and leaving the scene after causing death, as the defendant's motion is premised upon hearsay, conjecture, wow, strong words, and legally inappropriate reliance as to the substance of jury deliberations. Further, contrary to the defendant's claims, throughout jury deliberations, the defendant was given a full opportunity to be heard. The jury's communications to the court explicitly indicated an impasse on all charges. I mean, I don't know why they're even saying this because, again, the impasse is subjective, and the note didn't say, like, this is a lie. The note did not explicitly say an impasse on all charges. It didn't say that, and she didn't ask. Anyway, and the court carefully considered alternatives before declaring a mistrial. No, it didn't. It just declared a mistrial. The defendant's unsubstantiated but sensational post-trial claim that the, quote, jury reached a unanimous decision to acquit, end quote, lacks any merit or legal foundation. I disagree. On June 9th, 2022, okay, well, we're going to skip some of this because we already know this is the background, right? Then you just, in case anyone's wondering, they have to include this for the appellate courts and whatnot, right? Even though, like, we already know all of this. And an appellate court doesn't know all this already. So they're, okay, here we go. This is the charges. We already know all this. Okay. The defendant's motion states that the court's decision to declare a mistrial, quote, was sudden, brief, and unexpected, neither preceded nor accompanied by discussion with counsel, end quote. Yet, the defendant's motion and supporting affidavits of counsel inexplicably omit the full opportunity that the defendant was given to be heard and the defendant's consent to the mistrial. In case anyone missed it, I did time that on a live stream and I made a separate video. 4.65 seconds is what they had after they heard the note, and then she said the words, "I'm declaring a mistrial." And honestly, that's being generous because I rounded up. Beginning on Friday, June 28th, blah, blah, the jury sent a note stating, quote, "I am writing to inform you on behalf of the jury that despite our exhaustive review of the evidence and our diligent consideration of all disputed evidence, we've been unable to reach a unanimous verdict," end quote. At that time, so this was from that Friday. At that time, the court requested argument from the Commonwealth and defendant as to whether the jury had engaged in due and thorough deliberations. The Commonwealth responded that the jury had not had sufficient time to deliberate and requested that the jury be instructed to continue their deliberations. On the contrary, Attorney Yannetti argued, "We believe there's been sufficient time," and advocated for the jury to be declared deadlocked and provided the Tui Rodriguez instruction. Attorney Yannetti stated, "The word exhaustive is the word that I think is operative here." And here's what they were citing, footnote 1 and footnote 2. Okay, this is for due and thorough deliberations, footnote 1. Failure of jury to agree states that, quote, "If a jury, after due and thorough deliberations, returns to court without having agreed on a verdict, the court may state anew the evidence or any part of the evidence, explain to them anew the law applicable to the case, and send them out for further deliberation." That's interesting because I've never even seen that happen when the jury comes back and says they don't have a verdict. I've never seen them explain the evidence anew. That's interesting. But if they return a second time without having agreed on a verdict, they shall not be sent out again without their own consent, unless they ask from the court further explanation of the law. And I was actually wondering this because I was thinking to myself, well, how do they have this? Because the trial transcripts aren't available yet. But it looks like they're taking it from the different broadcasts and then transcribing it essentially. Okay, so Attorney Yannetti stated, the word exhaustive is the word that I think is operative here. They're communicating to the court that they've exhausted all manner of compromise, all manner of persuasion, and that they're at an impasse. You know, this is a case where the jury has the legal instructions. They're only really asked one question, which was to try to get a report they're not allowed to get. And I think the message has been received that the evidence is closed and they won't be getting anything more. Okay, well, that answers that question of mine. They've been working essentially, well, yeah, right. And that, of course, he's referring to the cert report. They asked for the cert report and they said no. The court said no. They've been working essentially nonstop over the last 3-4 days. We're approaching the weekend. They didn't come back. Well, we already know all this. Okay. Here's the case law for the instruction, which we read all that. Previously, the court ruled that given the length of the trial, the number of exhibits and complex issues in the case, there had not been due and thorough deliberations and instructed the jury to keep deliberating. On Monday, July 1st, 2024. So I think what they're trying to say there, and they're not wrong, is that because Yannetti wanted them to go ahead and read the instruction, that kind of means that they were indicating that they were in favor of a mistrial at that point. And I actually pointed that out when I was like, well, Yannetti seems to be kind of going back and forth and changed his mind. That was on that Friday. So it's interesting. And having said that, I still believe that even with that being the case, looking at that Rule 27B, she still should have asked them if they had a verdict on any of the charges, according to the rule. So that is the case no matter what. Like, I don't know how they're going to get around that. We'll see. We'll see how they handle it, because that's a tough one. That's going to be tough. All right. On Monday, July 1st, the jury sent another note to the court stating, Judge Canoni, despite our commitment to the duty entrusted in us, we find ourselves deeply divided by fundamental differences in our opinions and state of mind. The divergence in our views are not rooted. This is interesting because this says that they got the note at 10:45 a.m. But Judge Canoni did not read that note to the defense attorneys or publicly until the afternoon, because I remember that. That's when she declared a mistrial. Unless this is the second, maybe this is not the last final note. No, I guess this isn't. Sorry, I take that back. I guess this is the note before the 2E Rodriguez instruction. Okay, so Judge Canoni, despite our commitment to the duty entrusted in us, we find ourselves deeply divided by fundamental differences in our opinions and state of mind. The divergence in our views are not rooted in a lack of understanding or effort, but deeply held convictions. No, this is the last note. So she withheld that note from them? Huh. But deeply held convictions that each of us carry, ultimately leading to a point where consensus is unattainable. We recognize the weight of the submission and the implication it holds. Following receipt of that note, the court again inquired of the Commonwealth and defendant as to whether there had been due and thorough deliberations. Okay, wait, that's the second note? Well, I would just remember thinking that this was the same languaging in the final note. So it says 10:45 a.m. So, all right, anyway, we'll see. Following receipt of that note, the court again inquired of the Commonwealth and defendant as to whether there had been due and thorough deliberations. The Commonwealth argued that although the jury had been deliberating for 22 hours, given the length of the trial and the number of witnesses, the jury had yet to engage in thorough deliberations. Attorney Yannetti again sought a 2E Rodriguez instruction, stating that the jury has, quote, come back twice, indicating essentially that they're hopelessly deadlocked, that they've been over all the evidence. At this time, they have fundamental disagreements. Okay, yeah, for some reason, I thought that was the last note, but I guess that's the second note. At this time, they have fundamental disagreements about what the evidence means. It's a matter of opinion, not a matter of lack of understanding. The court found that at this point, the jury had engaged in due and thorough deliberations and read the instruction, right? Okay, we know all that. And then this is the last note at 2:30, right? On July 1st at approximately 2:30, the jury sent a final note stating, despite our rigorous efforts, we continue to find ourselves at an impasse. So the jury used the word impasse, which is why she used the word impasse. However, again, this word, especially looking in light of the verdict forms and the complicated nature of it, and then hearing from the jurors, this, again, the word, like I've been saying the whole time, is completely subjective, because that does not say on all counts, right? And given her jury instructions, which we've covered extensively, her jury instructions do say they need to have a verdict on each charge before filling out the forms. All right. Our perspectives on the evidence are starkly divided. Some members of the jury firmly believe that the evidence surpasses the burden of proof, establishing the elements of the charges beyond reasonable doubt. Conversely, others find the evidence fails to meet the standard and does not sufficiently establish the necessary elements of the charges. The deep division is not due to a lack of effort or diligence, but rather a sincere adherence to our individual principles and moral convictions. To continue to deliberate would be futile and only serve to force us to compromise these deeply held beliefs. Following receipt of that note, 4.65 seconds, the court discharged the jury and declared a mistrial. The representations made in counsel's affidavits have no legal bearing on the mistrial, as the jury did not reach any verdicts, partial or otherwise. Yeah, this is going to come back to the jury instructions. You heard it here first, guys. It's going to come back to the jury instructions because the way she read those instructions contradicts all of this. Quote, the only verdict which can be received and regarded as a complete and valid verdict of a jury upon which a judgment can be rendered is an open and public verdict given in and assented to in open court as the unanimous act of the jury and affirmed and entered of record in the presence and under sanction of the court. Okay, fine. I don't see why that's relevant. The verdict which determines the rights of the parties and is admitted of record and upon which the judgment is rendered is the verdict. So what they're saying, okay, what they're saying here with this case law is, well, these weren't true verdicts. I guess it's sort of because they didn't check it on boxes on the forms, right? Just what everyone keeps saying. Why didn't they check the boxes? And we've talked at length about that. I've made other videos explaining that it's the jury instructions. They followed her instructions. If it is not enough to show that the jury may have agreed on some issues at the time, if that limited showing were to control uncertainties would be invited. And this is saying no error in the judge's refusal to accept the not guilty verdict slips found in the jury deliberation room after the jury was discharged, where those slips were in contradiction of the report to the judge that they were deadlocked. Interesting. That is interesting. That's interesting. The verdict which determines, and reads again, the verdict which determines the rights of the parties and is admitted of record and upon which judgment is rendered is the verdict received from the lips of the foreman in open court. It is not enough to show that the jury may have agreed on some issues at the time if that limited showing were to control uncertainties would be. So this is interesting because what they're saying here is even if they had actually filled out some of those forms, this is wild, you guys, even if they'd filled out not guilty, which we don't know. This goes back to my other thing that I was saying, which is, did anyone ever even see the forms? We don't even know. We don't know if the forms were blank. We don't know if they were marked not guilty. We don't know. But again, her instructions were to not fill the forms out until they had agreed on each count. But this is saying that even in the event, and this is from this case law here, a juvenile Massachusetts Supreme Court case law, they're saying that even if they had filled out some of those slips, even if they'd filled them all out for not guilty, right? But they left the slips in the room and then gave word of mouth to the judge that they were deadlocked, they have to go with that. So while that would dispute any discrepancy over whether or not they had filled out the forms, it still doesn't change the fact that what they reported was based on what they heard from the judge in the jury instructions. It doesn't negate that. That's the argument I see going forward here. The hearsay comments and juror statements about what happened are legally irrelevant as the jury failed to reach any verdicts, and they're citing Blueford as anticipated. In Blueford, the jury sent a note to the judge indicating they were hopelessly deadlocked, and the court asked the foreperson to disclose the jury's votes on the 3 charges: first-degree murder, manslaughter, and negligent homicide. The foreperson reported the jury unanimously agreed the defendant was not guilty of murder, but were deadlocked on manslaughter and had not voted on negligent homicide. The court gave the jury an Allen instruction that emphasized the importance of reaching a verdict and instructed the jury to continue deliberations. After a half hour, the jury reported that they had not reached a verdict and a mistrial was declared. But what's missing here, again, is from that Rule 27B. Did the judge further inquire after this as to which charges? Again, as per the rule. The United States Supreme Court rebuffed the defendant's claim that the jury acquitted him of murder, as the foreperson's report was not a final verdict because the jury had continued to deliberate and, more importantly, gave no indication that they were still unanimous on the murder charge. The United States Supreme Court emphasized that when jurors engage in discussions about circumstances of the crime, it often causes one to rethink their stance on a greater offense and revisit a prior vote. Quote, the very object of the jury system, after all, is to secure unanimity by a comparison of views and by arguments among the jurors themselves. A single juror's change of mind is all it takes to require the jury to reconsider a greater offense. A Tui Rodriguez instruction is designed to urge the jury to reach a verdict by giving more serious consideration to opposing points of view. Right. And as we stated when we read over that instruction, especially compared to the North Carolina one, it seems like it's a bit strong and could actually cause discord amongst the jurors. It must be recognized as a practical matter that jury votes on included offenses may be the result of a temporary compromise in an effort to reach unanimity. Right, which is why you have to be careful. A jury should not be precluded from reconsidering a previous vote on any issue, and the weight of final adjudication should not be given to any jury that is not returned in a final verdict. And this is saying, again, oral affirmation of guilt or acquittal in open court is the only evidence the court can receive of free and unanimous assent of the jury to the verdict. I just feel like if that's the case, if we're really relying on jurors' word of mouth, they need to there needs to be, this is insane, there needs to be clear languaging that they're told they have to use, because the word impasse, again, is subjective and could mean any different things to different people. And obviously that's part of the issue here, right? If they're going to rely on word of mouth, they need to tell the jury in the instructions, here's the words you must use, right? I feel like. Because that's why the verdict forms matter, right? Like, essentially what they're saying is the verdict forms don't matter, it's the word of mouth. Well, then why do we have the verdict forms? The jury's notes were unambiguous that the jurors were, quote, deeply divided by fundamental differences in our opinions and state of mind. Again, but that still does not say on all charges. That resulted in a starkly divided jury as to the charges, emphasis on plural. Again, the argument there, count 2, which was the one that, from what we know, they were hung on, had multiple counts within it, right? The jury consistently indicated that their impasse was not due to a lack. Again, that's not the problem here. It's what were they impassed on. I swear to God, this just makes pissy. This is like a straw man argument, right? They're trying to say these are the problems, but these are not the real problems, in my opinion. The jury consistently indicated that their impasse was not due to a lack of understanding or of the law or the charges, but a profound divergence of deeply held convictions, ultimately leading to a point where consensus is unattainable. Again, they're basing that on the jury instructions they heard from the judge, which said they had to have a verdict on each charge. The jury's notes did not indicate agreement or acquittal on any of the charges, again, which is why the judge is supposed to ask, I know I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I can't help it, this pisses me off. Rather, it was evident that the jury was unable to agree on any charges due to their sincere adherence to their individual principles and moral convictions. You know, and also they have a sincere adherence to following the rules given to them by Judge Bev in the jury instructions, which is part of the problem. Contrary to representations made in the defendant's motion and supporting affidavits, the defendant advocated and consented to a mistrial. Well, yeah, I beg to differ on that as well. As she had adequate opportunities to object and instead remained silent, I disagree, which removes any double jeopardy bar to retrial. And here's some case law. So now we're getting to see their opposing case law. Consent to a mistrial may be inferred from silence where a defendant had the opportunity to object and failed to do so. This is what's so fascinating about the law, right? Because literally the case law that the defense cited says the complete opposite and says that the silence or lack of objection does not equal consent. We've covered that extensively and it's included in the flow chart that I made. So here's some more case law where defense counsel told the judge he believed the jury was at an impasse in deliberations and had no objection to the judge, declaring a mistrial. Such consent removed any double jeopardy bar to retrial. Some more case law. Despite having an adequate opportunity to object, defense counsel remained silent. Proper to infer from counsel's conduct that defendant consented to a mistrial. So where you have a lot of conflicting case law, it's going to matter which case law is the binding case law, right? The primary mandatory binding authority. So if there's case law from a higher level court, so like, for example, this is Massachusetts Supreme Court, but this is Massachusetts Appellate Court. So if there's contradicting case law between two, you go with the higher one. Now, the highest, as we've mentioned, is the U.S. Supreme Court case law. So whichever side, be it the Commonwealth or the defense, can find U.S. Supreme Court case law that supports their theory and their argument, that is what Judge Bev legally is bound to follow. Here again, the manifest necessity test has no application in situations whereas here the defendant requested or effectively I'm sorry, this is bullshit. Sorry. The defendant requested or effectively consented, as if they're synonymous, right? But using the word effectively in there. Wow. They're saying that this isn't even saying they actually consented. They're saying what this is like hinting at is by being silent, right? They're effectively consenting, and that is the equivalent of requesting a mistrial. That's wild. That's absolutely fucking wild. That's from 2002. I don't know, man. I'd be curious to see if that got overturned after that. During her full opportunities to be heard on June 28th and July 1st, at no time did any of the defendant's 3 counsels request inquiry as to what charge or charges the jury was deadlocked on. Right. Having said that, though, the judge is supposed to. Rather, the defendant was quick to request a Tui Rodriguez instruction at the first opportunity, indicating a belief based on the clear and obvious language of the jury's notes that, as stated by Attorney Yannetti, the jury was hopelessly deadlocked and exhausted all manner of compromise and was engaged in fundamental disagreements of what the evidence means. Right. They're just quoting the same things over and over again. The request for a Tui Rodriguez instruction permits, quote, the inference that both parties were provided an opportunity to be heard on possible alternatives to a mistrial. I mean, that's not part of the issue, though. Like, all this is irrelevant. The timing of a Tui Rodriguez charge is committed to the discretion of the trial judge. For sure. I don't know why that's relevant. Furthermore, following the discharge of the jury, the court engaged the Commonwealth and defendant in discussions about choosing a status date for scheduling a retrial. At no time during that hearing did the defendant object or indicate displeasure with the mistrial. That's true. However, she had already declared it, right? So I don't even know that would have been helpful. They're arguing it because it didn't happen, but had it happened, they'd be in the same position they are now, because once the mistrial is declared, it's declared, right? So that's actually, again, that's another like a red herring, a straw man argument. Like, they would have had to object during that 4.65 seconds. And the other thing, is why the hell did she not let them read the note? Both sides got to read those notes ahead of time with each other note. She didn't read that note. She didn't let them read that note. Okay. Yeah, Candace, I hope so too, but you know what? I bet she will be. Oh, shout out to Black Widow's sister, Olivia. I hope you're watching, Olivia, but if you're watching or not watching, we love you, and we love your sister, Black Widow. She's amazing. The mistrial was also supported by a manifest necessity. Okay, I covered this, guys, remember? Jury deadlock is not manifest necessity. We talked about this. And I remember I even said, holy shit, in the video that I made, what was it, yesterday? It wasn't live, it was a video. I even said, oh my God, that is so fucking funny. Sometimes I'm like, wow, things are going to be really relevant in hindsight, right? I even said the Commonwealth would be crazy to argue manifest necessity because there's absolutely no way that there was manifest necessity. I said, but should they try to argue it, the defense already foresaw that and put in case law to shoot that down just in case. But I even said they would be crazy because there was not manifest necessity. And here they are. This to me shows that they're grasping at straws, in my opinion, because there's no way, dude, what are they going to say here? Holy shit. I can't even believe they're doing this. Like I even said, again, they would have to be crazy, but we know they are crazy. So I can't rule it out, but yeah, they would have to be crazy. And then here they are. Wow. In Rule 27B, it even says that a deadlock jury is not manifest necessity. So this case law is from 2017. In considering whether to declare a mistrial over a defendant's objection, the court must give counsel a full opportunity to be heard and careful consideration to alternatives to a mistrial. Notice that this isn't a quote. Like oftentimes what we see before in this document and others is when they're citing case law, they quote it. This is in parentheses, which means essentially they're paraphrasing. They're not quoting it. So that's interesting. It might be worth looking into that case law. Let me write it down to see what they actually say there, because this is the Commonwealth paraphrasing. Commonwealth v. Ryan. We will look into that. Wow. Wow. I still don't know how this supports their point, though, that it's manifest necessity. This has nothing, this doesn't say anything about that. In considering whether to declare a mistrial over a defendant's objection. Oh, over a defendant's objection. Right. Okay. But that's where there is manifest necessity. How are they going to? Okay. A frequent and traditional example of manifest necessity to declare a mistrial is where the jury were discharged because they were unable to come to an agreement on verdict. And this is from 1974 case law. Everything that we've seen says that manifest necessity is not a deadlocked jury. They're citing more case law here. Interesting. Let me see something real quick, guys. Let me see something real quick. Hold on. Why is that not? Okay. Interesting. So I'm seeing some differing things here. Interesting. Hold on. So, Let me pull this up. Okay, let me share this with you guys. Let me see if this will work. All right, check it out, guys. Hi, Kidsmits. All right, so this is from NC, but let's see what this says here. So key concepts. Mistrial may be declared on a motion of either party or the court's own motion when a deadlocked jury is unable to reach a unanimous verdict or when other manifest necessity has made it impossible to proceed in accordance with the law. Mistrial may also be declared when an error, defect, or misconduct, right, like jury tampering, mistrial is a drastic remedy in lesser measures, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but let's see what it says here. Manifest necessity. The first basis for declaring a mistrial is when circumstances not instigated by the parties or the counsel have affected the proceedings, such that an impartial trial cannot be conducted. Examples: adverse weather, jury tampering, illness, or death. Those are good examples because the example I've been giving is a bomb going off. In which case, the trial judge has authority to declare a mistrial with or without defendant's consent. Right, okay, well, that makes sense. It's like an emergency situation, basically. Okay, this is what we need here. So the second and most common basis for declaring a mistrial arises when the jury is deadlocked and cannot reach a unanimous verdict. Of course, the fact that a jury cannot immediately agree on a verdict does not require a mistrial, and a judge will normally respond to a jury's first indication of deadlock by instructing them to keep deliberating, and they'll read the instruction. In most cases, assuming the jury deadlock resulted simply from an honest disagreement between jurors and not to prosecutorial or judicial misconduct, a mistrial granted on this basis will not bar a retrial on double jeopardy grounds. Even though it is addressed individually in the statutes and cases cited above, the jury's inability to reach a unanimous verdict is really just one specific type of manifest necessity. Okay, hold on. Because here's the thing. I thought that literally it was not. Let me do this. Let's go back to our favorite. Let's go back to this again for the bazillionth time. Wait, not there. Hold on. Here. We're going to look at this. I feel like we need to just have this like constantly, like I feel like it needs to be just tattooed on the inside of my eyelids just to save time. Okay, I think it's down here. I can't believe we're reading this again for the bazillionth time. Since Perez, it has been held that where the jury has been unable to agree upon a verdict, the declaration of mistrial is a classic example of manifest necessity. Huh. Wait, hold on. It is within the discretion of the court to declare a mistrial where there is a manifest necessity. Oh, boy. I was really, why did I think that it could not be manifest necessity? I wonder if what it is it's a gray area where the judge determines if it's manifest necessity or not, which is interesting because when the judge declares a mistrial, it's not like anyone says, okay, is this a mistrial with manifest necessity or not, which matters. That makes a difference. And then it's like after the fact, you can be like, yeah, it's manifest necessity. So then therefore there's no double jeopardy, which is fucked. So I don't really know. I've thought when we went over this a billion times, it was not manifest necessity. Hold on. Let me just make sure I'm not missing something. That's funny. The use of a verdict slip will help reduce errors in the rendering and announcing of verdicts. Well, from what the Commonwealth just cited, you guys, the Commonwealth just cited case law that says the verdict slip doesn't matter. It's what the jury says to the judge that matters, which is wild. So again, there's a lot of issues in what they're saying. I mean, this is the part here that I keep referencing that Judge Bev just skipped, that she didn't first receive and record the verdicts, which the jury could agree upon. Are we ever going to find out if they filled out those forms or not? That's what I want to know. See, it is within the discretion of the court. This is the problem right here. It's within the discretion of the court to declare a mistrial where there is manifest necessity. Those words were never used. I mean, to me, it seems like those words need to be used if they want us to come back in hindsight and be like, yeah, there was manifest necessity. So like, it's all good. We can retry her. Okay, let's go back to the document. Fucking hell. Okay. This is where we were. So just again, case law saying that hung jury's manifest necessity, which just that's why I wanted to pull stuff up because I was like, wait, what? I did not get that impression from any of the shit that we've covered. In fact, again, I thought it was the opposite. And just to reiterate, in the from what I was reading on the North Carolina case law there, it said the first examples it gives of manifest necessity are things like an emergency, like a bomb going off, like I keep saying, or in illness or death, shit like that, right? Okay, the trial judge this is messed up. The trial judge is best situated to determine whether the ends of substantial justice cannot be attained without discontinuing the trial. That's in declaring a mistrial, quote, premised upon the trial judge's belief that the jury is unable to reach a verdict, that decision is treated with greater deference because otherwise there would be danger that the judge would employ coercive means to break the apparent deadlock. Well, we don't want them coerced, but they were supposed to be asked. Deadlocked juries are particularly susceptible to coercion. Yes, we know. The term manifest necessity is another way of saying that in a particular case, the right of the defendant must yield to that of the public. Okay. The trial judge interacts directly with the jurors and is in the best position to determine whether the jury is deadlocked. I mean, right. I agree with that. But the problem is different judges are going to interact with jurors in different ways. And what if the judge doesn't follow the rule 27? Okay. The court engaged in considerable efforts and sent the jury back to deliberate 2 times following notes that they were at an impasse. And in addition to finding that the jury had engaged in due and thorough deliberations and providing the Tui Rodriguez instruction at the request of the defendant and to her satisfaction, during deliberations, the court amended the verdict slips to depict clearly the lesser included offenses and provided the jury supplemental instruction on how to consider lesser included offenses. Right. Well, At least they're mentioning that. They're probably not going to say that could be what they meant by charges, but anyway. Never required trial court. I wonder if they're just going to completely ignore Rule 27. Let's see what happens. I mean, they would have to, right? The defendants claim that the judge should have inquired of the jury holds no... keep reading, Chelsea. Holy shit, right? This is exactly what I was just talking about. All right, what are they going to say? The defendants claim that the judge should have inquired of the jury holds no merit as, quote, nothing in our case law or in their statutes required the judge to make either inquiry, whether there was reasonable probability or any unanimous verdicts, or if the jury would consent to further deliberations as a matter of course, and the circumstances before the judge did not necessitate either inquiry. The final note from the foreperson unequivocally stated that the jury were unable to come to a unanimous decision, in other words, that the jury were deadlocked. The note did not suggest, for example, that the jury were merely having trouble making a decision or needed further instructions from the judge. All of that is one long quote from this case law here. Wow. So shout out to Triple R Wifey. I haven't been looking at chats. I've been reading this, but yes, shout out to Triple R Wifey. Shout out to DSN. Is Dr. Bob here? We need Dr. Bob, because I am just shocked here that this is crazy. So I think what will matter here is the specifics of the case. Like I said in that video that I made, right? Remember? And like IFRAC, right? The issues, that's the legal issues, and then the facts. Because let me put it this way. We don't know that this, whatever case this is, there might have only been one charge. And that's a completely different situation. For example, if there was only one charge and then the jury comes back and says they're deadlocked, then yes, there's no need to inquire about what, you know what I mean? It says here, the foreperson unequivocally stated that the jury were unable to come to a unanimous decision, that they were deadlocked, right? But this doesn't say that there were multiple charges. We're going to have to look into this case law as well. I'm sure the defense will point all this out in their response, but let me write this down. This is Fuentes, 448 Mass. Because again, some of this stuff is like paraphrased or out of context. And again, we don't have the facts of the case here. That's going to matter as to if it's on point or not. Because when you cite case law, it has to be on point. Given the 4 days of deliberations and the jury's indicate, I should add to that, if they're citing case law that's not on point, then that shows that there's not case law that actually supports their argument. Given the 4 days of deliberations, the jury's indication that they had carefully reviewed all the evidence and that their divergent opinions were premised upon deeply held moral convictions, the court was left with no reasonable alternative other than to declare a mistrial. Further consultation with counsel would not have produced any fruitful alternatives, nor was there a reasonable probability the jury would have. So they skipped over the judge asking them real quick. They just had that one quote here, which doesn't actually say anything specifically about, in this case, having more than one charge. That's all they have. They're skipping. They're moving on. Interesting. And again, they've not mentioned Rule 27 yet. So yeah, given the 4 days of deliberations, the jury's indication that they carefully reviewed all the evidence and their divergent opinions were premised upon deeply held moral convictions, the court was left with no reasonable alternative other than to declare a mistrial. Further consultation with counsel would not have produced any fruitful alternatives, nor was there a reasonable probability the jury would have consented to deliberate further, particularly when the objection speculation, particularly when the jury wrote, to continue to deliberate would be futile and only serve to force us to compromise. Again, this all comes back to the jury instructions, man. All of what the jury says still makes sense, and it can still be true that they had found verdicts on counts 1 and counts 3 when you look at the jury instructions. Or, well, we can't look at them, but when you hear them. Moreover, whether counsel initiates contact with a discharged juror by first sending notice to the opposing party with the substance of the proposed communication, or if the juror initiates contact with counsel as alleged in the defendant's motion, counsel may communicate with jurors only about permissible subjects. Permissible subjects include counsel's performance during trial, extraneous influence on the jury's deliberation, or a juror's bias toward a defendant. Neither extraneous influence nor a claim of juror bias is alleged by the defendant to have been an issue. Rather, what the defendant's motion is merely premised upon and what is expressly prohibited inquiry is that of the jury's deliberative process and substance of the jury's deliberations. So that is one thing that can be yeah, all right. We've talked a bit about that, right? And here's a quote from this case law. The secrecy of jury deliberations has served as a bedrock of our judicial system, and inquiry into the jury's deliberative process would intrude improperly into the jury's function. Yeah, I mean, we all know that to be the case. The common law principle that it is essential to the freedom and independence of the jury deliberations that their discussions in the jury room should be kept secret and inviolable was not and arguably could not be overruled by the adoption of Rule 3.5c. I'm curious what Rule 3.5c says. So they're citing the same previous case law. It is improper for counsel to inquire with jurors or through intermediaries the individual or collective thought process of the jury, the reasons for their decision, or the substance of their deliberations. Massachusetts continues to adhere to common law principles, barring inquiry into the comments of jury deliberations and any impeachment of jury verdicts based on information gained from such inappropriate inquiry. So this could be where Judge Bev shuts it down, is that this inquiry was inappropriate. She could, unfortunately, in my opinion, she could bypass any of the problems with her conduct, as it were. For example, not following Rule 27b. She could probably bypass that by just simply saying, well, the inquiry was inappropriate, we're done here. Maybe. So that sucks. I hate this. Now, having said that, of course, this is a response to the defense's motion, and the defense is also going to respond. And we will see them citing, I'm sure, case law that says that the inquiries were not infringing upon the what is the word I'm looking for? The oh my God, I'm losing the word. The province of the jury. That's the word I'm looking for. I'm sure they will have case law that says this was not a problem. This was not infringing on the jury's province into their deliberations. So let's just wait to see what they say and try to not get too concerned. I'm giving myself a pep talk there. Similarly, it would be improper for the court to inquire through affidavits or an evidentiary hearing. No, we need an evidentiary hearing. The substance of the jury's deliberations. Now, we heard a lot about that with Murdaugh. You guys already know. It's entirely possible to inquire to the jury with an evidentiary hearing and not get into the substance of the deliberations, especially if, as juror number 4 says, they would all come in and just say, yep, we were unanimous on counts 1 and counts 3. So they can say that, and that is not getting into the substance of their deliberations. They can all come in and say, yeah, they could just say yes or no. Yes, were you unanimous? Yes, right? And one by one. Again, it's funny because the Commonwealth, though, according to them, it's like none of this should even be happening in the first place, but they're continuing to go ahead and provide additional argument should it come to this. So here's this case law. If after communicating with a juror, an attorney wishes to secure an affidavit from the juror, any such affidavit must focus on extraneous influences, not the substance of the jury deliberations or the individual or collective thought processes of the juror or the jury as a whole. Again, they're going to have other case law when they respond, the defense responds, that's going to say otherwise, I'm sure. We've already seen this. We've already seen disputing case law on manifest necessity, and on God, there was something else earlier too. Oh, right. If the judge does have to ask the jury about, and that was so far, I just on this cursory read, I think that was so far the weakest point that the Commonwealth made in terms of they had the least support there when the point where they tried to say the judge doesn't have to ask further. That was their weakest one. So, and I think, in my opinion, that's the defense's strongest argument. So we'll see. Okay, the trial judge acted within discretion to declare mistrial where a proposed inquiry of deliberating juror could not be made without inquiring into, I think I already read that. The Supreme Judicial Court has instructed that whenever a judge asks individual jurors about the possibility of extraneous influences on jury deliberations, whether of jurors who are still sitting as such or jurors who have been discharged, the purpose of the individual voir dire is not to delve into the jury's deliberations. Again, all this is moot because they can totally do this and inquire without delving into the jury's deliberations. There should not be an inquiry into a juror's individual or the jury's collective thought processes. Likewise, polling the jury on the various possible verdicts during their deliberations or after their discharge would constitute an unwarranted and unwise intrusion into the province of the jury. And the Supreme Judicial Court has, quote, cautioned strongly against the risk of coercion inherent in questioning jurors, particularly in individual colloquies. So this sounds like the U.S. Supreme Court, although they didn't say U.S. So, moreover, now this is Massachusetts case law. What's funny is the defense also cited Commonwealth v. Roth. All right, let's see what this says. One cannot assume from the mere report of deadlock that there is a final verdict lurking within that deadlock that may be extracted. In many instances, asking a deadlocked jury about partial verdicts would constitute attempting to extract from the jury something that does not exist. Asking a jury to report where they stand on the offenses charged invites a report that may be based on only preliminary tentative deliberation, if any, on that level of offense, or hasty resumption of deliberations concerning that level of offense in an effort to satisfy the judge's apparent desire for a decision. What this is trying to say, and I don't really agree with it, is that by the judge asking, well, were there any verdicts that you, or any charges you did have a verdict on, that it would make the jury feel like they have to now then go back and come up with verdicts on the other charges. That logically doesn't compute for me. Such inquiries of the jury may succeed in extracting a partial verdict. That's not the point. But we could not have confidence, though, that the partial verdict is the product of a thoughtful and thorough deliberation process. If the judge asks them and they immediately can respond and say, yeah, we do have verdicts on such and such, then clearly this is not an issue, right? This would only be an issue if it's like they come back after they go back and deliberate more, and then they come back with a partial verdict. That's completely different. So I disagree with this. Like, if the judge asked them at the time when she got that note, and they could right there as they stood said, yeah, we have verdicts on counts 1 and 3 or whatever, however words they want to use, then clearly that all of this is moot because there's no risk of any coercion. There's no risk of them feeling pressured. Okay, the risks of juror coercion are too high, and the reliability of any such partial verdict returned is too low to warrant such an approach to salvaging some partial result. Yeah, salvaging is not the issue because it sounds like they already were decided on those. Okay. Similarly, even if the deadlock does pertain to some distinction between the various levels of an offense, a judge has no way of knowing whether the jury have in fact fully considered the offenses as charged. Well, they stated they had, so irrelevant. A desire to extract information from a deadlocked jury does not solve the significant problems in attempting to do so. I don't even know what that means. It's out of context. A court's inquiry into possible verdicts improperly intrudes on the jury's function. It can, doesn't have to. And the ostensible benefits to be gained by such procedure outweighed by its risks. Can be, not always the case. For the foregoing reasons, the defendant's motion should be denied, in all caps, underlined, and in bold. As there was no verdict that acquits the defendant, no grounds for the court or counsel to inquire into the deliberative process of the discharged jury, the defendant consented to the mistrial, and the court properly declared a mistrial due to a deadlocked jury who was at an impasse due to their starkly divided perspectives on the evidence and their sincere adherence to individual morals and moral convictions. Individual principles and moral convictions. As such, retrial is not barred by the double jeopardy or constitutional principles, and the Commonwealth may retry the defendant on 3 indictments and any lesser included offenses. It's interesting because they actually point out 4 legal issues here. So the first, that there was no verdict that acquits the defendant, that is up in the air. Clearly, I don't think they proved that. The Commonwealth, I mean. 2, no grounds for the court or counsel to inquire into the deliberative process of a discharged jury. I don't think they even really, they focused more on the process being improper itself, but not that there weren't grounds. They didn't focus on the grounds. So that's interesting. They focused on the risk, but not the grounds. So I don't think they didn't prove that at all. The defendant consented to the mistrial here. There's conflicting case law on that, right? The defense provided case law that states the opposite of what the Commonwealth did. So that is up for debate. And then the court properly declared a mistrial due to a deadlocked jury. Again, they completely ignored Rule 27 here, right? Which is interesting. That's interesting, right? Fuck, because how can they just ignore that? They went ahead and tried to find contradicting case law to a lot of what the defense presented. But you know what? The defense also cited Rule 27, and the Commonwealth has left that out completely, which is really interesting. I will say, when it comes to mandatory binding authority, guys, this, Rule 27, is the binding authority over the Massachusetts case law. So if there's discrepancy between the two, they have to follow. This is a statute. So they have to go with this. This is binding above Massachusetts case law. And it is the equivalent with U.S. Supreme Court case law. However, the Commonwealth did not cite any U.S. Supreme Court case law. So, okay. Oh, boy. All right. So was that their fourth issue there? The court properly declared a mistrial due to a deadlocked jury. Again, not according to Rule 27B. Let's just look at it again. Right here, their argument. And the court properly declared a mistrial due to a deadlocked jury. It never lets me highlight things properly on here. And let's take a look one more time, just for funsies, at Rule 27B. This rule also provides that the court may declare a mistrial in cases where the jury is unable to reach a verdict. However, it must first receive and record the verdicts which the jury can agree upon. So I disagree with the Commonwealth on this fourth issue. So looking at it, in my opinion, of the four issues they stated here, the only one that holds any water is this one that is in huge dispute, large dispute, that the defendant consented to the mistrial. That's the one where there is contradicting case law. The rest of these issues, of which they stated four, they did not prove, in my opinion. Respectfully submitted, this fucker right here. Disgusting. Look, and there's freaking Lolly. Oh my God, you guys, hold on. I have not even looked at the chat. Let me see what you guys are saying. Spencer, we have a new friend. Shout out to Spencer. Spencer says, I don't know what's going on, but I wholeheartedly agree with Chelsea on this one based on the tone alone. Well, feel free to go back on replay. I always timestamp everything very specifically. So yeah, I don't know how you missed 27B. We've talked about it a lot. And I brought it up on the last video that I did. That wasn't a live stream. It was just a video breaking down manifest necessity and Rule 27B. That's actually called that. But we did talk about it other times as well. So yeah, but do you see what I mean? And the defense, let me pull up the defense's motion. Because they actually do cite it and the Commonwealth ignored it. So that's interesting. Okay. So, oh wait, let me get rid of the lolly bird so we can see this. Okay. So here, I have this document pretty much memorized at this point because I've covered it so much. Scroll. Here. Massachusetts law to the contrary clearly permitted the jury to return a partial verdict on some but all counts, and that there's 27B. Now, what's interesting is they didn't cite it for the part that I think is the most important. I mean, what do I know, right? But like they at least though did cite it, in which case what usually happens in a response is whoever is the responding party, in this case the Commonwealth, will address what the first party, the moving party, the movement, right? What the moving party cites as case law and what their arguments are. They are supposed to go back. Well, if they're going to be thorough and write a proper motion that holds any weight, they should respond to each of those issues and contradicting case law, right? Provide contrary case law. In other words, they just ignored 27B. And again, here they're not even citing the defense. Isn't even citing the most important part of the rule. But they did cite it. And where they have it is a footnote. Right. It's always hard to see their little footnotes because they're very small. Here. Declining to require court to consider the jury new options for a verdict in the form of partial verdicts unless they're included offenses, where under Arkansas law, the jury's options were limited to two, either convict on one of the offenses or acquit on all. And where they say Arkansas, they're using Blueford. So they're using Blueford here to their advantage to say this isn't like Blueford. The Commonwealth is going to cite Blueford, and Blueford does not apply. And again, remember when I was like, oh yeah, didn't the defense cite Roth? There we go. So let's look at this because this is interesting because they have here, like Roth is an example where they both cited the same case law and are using it for different reasons. So let's look at this. So here where they're citing Roth, such inquiry in effect implies that the jury should consider conviction on the lesser count. No similar danger is present, whereas here the jury was asked to return three separate verdicts on three separate counts. This is important because that's literally the language she used in the jury instructions, okay? And then here's the quote from Roth, distinguishing situation where a defendant has been charged in separate indictments. You guys, sometimes I'm like, wow, am I psychic? Because remember, when we looked over that, what did I say? I complained because I said, well, this is ambiguous because it looks like this defendant could only have one charge, and that's different from when you have multiple charges or multiple indictments, right? If you only have one indictment, then yes, it would be irrelevant to say, can you come back with a verdict on any of the counts? Because there's only one. So, okay, yeah. And they've already cited Roth saying this works in our favor because it's saying a distinguishing situation where a defendant has been charged in separate indictments, which Karen has three still, or complaints each with a separate verdict slip. That's the case here. Let's go back to the Commonwealth and see what they cited for Roth again. Here, this is the one I was up in arms about, right? To quote Phil Waters, had my panties in a wad over this because of that reason. So that's so fucking funny. So the Commonwealth cites the same case law and leaves out the part that is relevant because it's the part that says if there's more than one indictment, it's different, which is what I literally said, just based on the fact that this logically doesn't make sense, right? You guys see what I mean? Like, that's really crazy. Oh my God. Oh my God. The gall that you would have to cite it and leave out the relevant part because it doesn't work in your favor. Deep breaths. Hold on, guys. It's time for something. Hold on. I probably should have goated earlier, but it's okay. I'm goating now. We're going to goat now to make up for it. All of the goat. Someone wants to do it in the chat. ! Goat. Nightbot will have our backs on that one. Shout out to Nightbot. Shout out to the goat. Shout out to Justice, which would be great if it served in this case. Would love to see that. Hope you guys could hear the goat. Otherwise, that would have been confusing. Oh my God. DSN says it hurts less each time you say it. Oh my God. Yeah, DSN has a good story about his name. I can explain this to Spencer, our new friend. Welcome to the Squirrel Crew. Let me go ahead and put a link in the chat for Discord as well. So, where the name came from is DSN's son had show and tell day at school and brought in one of DSN's legit old school action figures, which is what the thumbnail is in the picture. And brought this, I can't remember, what was it, G.I. Joe? Brought it in for show and tell at school. And when they asked what his name is, and I believe you said your son was in first grade. I might be getting the year wrong. I know I got it correct the last time I told the story, but kindergartner, first grade. And he responded, Daddy Short Nuts. And so that's where the name came from. So yeah. Yeah, we call him DSN. So yes, so happy to have you here, Spencer. Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, the designation's right. I understand. It does. There's a lot. Wow. So I would not be surprised if pretty much accurate. Feel free to let me know what I got wrong. I wouldn't be surprised if the defense files a response to this pretty quickly. Because they're going to be ready. They're going to be ready. I mean, maybe today, maybe. But if not today, then definitely by Monday. This, in my opinion, is really easy to shoot down, the vast majority of it. I think the manifest necessity is a weird one because, again, that really seems like a kind of a gray area. But still, there's so many other issues that they need to be sorted. Yes, of course, the etymology, yes. Kindergarten over Zoom. As I was saying it, I was like, wait, fuck, I think it was over Zoom. And I knew I fucked that up. Yeah. In my head, I was like, Zoom. It was Zoom. Yes. And he was in kindergarten. Okay. So I did get to the kindergarten part eventually, though. That's good. Yes, we are very crazy. So yes, you're in the right place if you like that, if you like crazy. There's the lolly bird. I'm not going to do a shout out to the lolly bird because we hate the lolly bird. Yeah, Kid Smith says you have no idea. Yeah, lots of crazy. And we do have a music video as well for the Karen Reed trial. Get low Canton style, in case our new friend is interested. Spencer says, if I didn't love it, I wouldn't love myself. I feel at home here. I love it. Whenever we have new friends, they all say something similar. It's great. It's really awesome. Dr. Bob, who doesn't look like he's here today, is another new school friend who said something very similar, but he served as a jury foreperson in Massachusetts twice. And he's actually visited the house on 34 Fairview. So he's like a local, and he's a retired physics teacher and school principal. He's very smart. And he said something very similar, which was great. So we love that people feel at home. Okay, let's watch the music video. We'll do the music video since we're getting some requests for that. So a severed head. Yeah, that's me trying to use my lack of technology skills to make a lolly bird. And that is his real tie that he wore during closing arguments. That is the real lolly tie. In my mind, it's his lucky tie because he thinks he's doing a good job, which is just really funny. All right, so let's do the music video for those who haven't seen it. Let me find it. You guys ready to get low Canton style? There's snow. There's snow. All right. Here we go. Do 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 339 Canton time. Jackson United, it's time to shine. There's snow, there's snow, there's snow, there's snow. To the window, to the wall, to the wall, to the bartender's last call. At the waterfall. Ah, sleep, sleep, motherfucker. Ah, sleep, sleep, goddamn. Ah, sleep, sleep, motherfucker. Ah, sleep, sleep, goddamn. They'll crunk and act and meet. Friends will be breast when they have too much drink in their minds. Everything's fine, they've been after party together about 50 damn times. To the window, to the wall, to the wall. To the bartender's last call. At the waterfall. Ah, sleep, sleep, motherfucker. Ah, sleep, sleep, goddamn, goddamn. Ah, sleep, sleep, motherfucker. Ah, sleep, sleep, goddamn. Do, 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 do. Y'all, I love you guys because Black Witter has told me that she will be in other chats and put sleep MF in the chat, and probably most people don't know what she means unless there's somebody here that's also there, which is awesome. DSN says it looks great on the lolly bird, referring to the tie. Yeah, y'all, making that video was really fun, and I had to make sure I got it right with the timing. DSN says this song is part of my life soundtrack. Yep, Little John. Yep. And the East Side Boys, right? Yeah, it is. It will get stuck. It will get stuck in your head. Black Witter says she sings it while doing chores. Amazing. We have a lot of fun things. We have this one.
That call is actually from Brian Higgins to you, isn't it?
Yes.
Obviously, you know how long 22 seconds is.
What's that?
You know how long 22 seconds lasts?
Yes. There's no evidence of anything in this case.
Accurate.
You would use a solo cup.
I'm sorry, what?
Objection, Your Honor.
Solo cup.
Offender's not here right now, but I know she really loves that one, the solo cup one. Should we do Alex Murdaugh? May as well.
Not unusual to steal from anyone. Not unusual to have killed your wife and son. But even God will never forget what you've done. Not unusual to see you lie or pretend to cry.
It's a house.
I think also let's just do this because this is my favorite thing ever is the road trip crew with the lolly bird trailing along like garbage. So we have so much fun. And yes. So yeah, and I figured this was I was thinking along those exact same lines DSN as well. So we got where is it?
It's a house.
Oh wait, let me
House.
hold on. Sorry, let me turn this up. Hold on. Here we go.
It's a house.
Hey, he's got a bird in his mouth.
This is a chicken.
It's a guinea.
You can hear the birds in the background clocking, clock, clock. Oh, so good. Road trip, gang's all here. And Lolly. He wasn't invited. Every time. And then we can also do our. Is anyone ready to be surprised? Right? Anyone ready for a surprise? Dude, surprise! Oh my god. I love it so much. So, you know what's so crazy is apparently what's going on in Baldwin right now is they're moving for like a mistrial, or actually, I guess just a dismissal of, I don't even know. I just heard rumblings about it. Black Widow says she saw a squirrel video with a fake horse head today. That's interesting. I do love hybrid animals, but I don't know how I feel about that specifically. I'd have to see it. Poots in the back, yeah. He barely got invited. But yeah, so I think it's crazy because a lot of people probably missed this filing because it happened at the same time as a bunch of shenanigans there with Baldwin, which we don't know yet, but rumblings are that the prosecution withheld evidence, which is a Brady violation. So we will see what happens with all of that. But big shout out to DSN because DSN watching the Debbie Heard trial for the first time has inspired us to do for our first time tonight. It is the Friday night Squirrelfest, and we're going to be watching Amber Heard. It looks like DSN is going to finish with day 14 today, and then we're going to pick up with day 15, which is Amber on direct examination. And it's right. We're going to get into the Australia story and all that. And as per usual, I'm going to also be reading the sidebars live when they go to sidebar. So for anyone who hasn't seen the live trial at all, or the trial plus the sidebars, or any of that, please join us. We're going to have a blast. It's going to be so fucking fun. And by the way, you know what will get to make an appearance is the Elaine voice, and maybe even some sidebar songs. Oh my gosh, it's been so long. It feels like forever. Because for anyone who didn't know, when I read the sidebars before, it feels like ages ago, just from reading them for hours and hours on end over time without intentionally doing so, I was hearing Elaine's voice in my head in a specific way. And then just like with Lolly, right? I'm Molly, squawk, squawk, right? So I developed an Elaine voice. But of course, with the sidebars, I'm actually reading her talking. So the Elaine voice will get to make an appearance. Yeah. So we'd love to see you tonight when we go. I think I have it scheduled for 8 o'clock. So and also if you do join the Discord, they should send you notifications through there because sometimes YouTube doesn't send them, as everyone knows. And so there should be notifications coming through on the Discord. It looks like YouTube's gotten some of the issues worked out from what was happening a couple days ago, which is good. But all the trials are crazy. That's accurate. Yeah, I'm shooting for 8 o'clock. Might be 8:30, but I'll try to post in the Discord if I change the time, I'll try to post in the Discord, because changing the time doesn't seem to always refresh, I guess is the word. It doesn't always refresh on YouTube or whatever. So if I do that, I'll try to remember to post in the Discord. But yeah, 8 or 8:30 should be around there, but I have it scheduled for 8. So it's all good. It's all good. And then we'll watch as much as we can. And then, like I said, I don't want to disrupt DSN's flow. So if he continues watching the trial tomorrow during the day or whatever, we can actually pick up tomorrow night and we can join him where he left off. Or some of it might be worth watching again to you, DSN. You might be like, I'm totally fine with watching, where we left off. I mean, this is Amber on the Stand is legendary. So, and especially day 15, things change. Let me just say that much. Things really change. I'm not going to give any spoilers, but that was a turning point in this trial, I think, for most people watching, if not everybody. There's a lot. Days 15, 16, 17, and 18, I think also. She's on the stand. Wait, hold on. Sorry. It's 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. She's on the stand for like 4 or 5 days. And I already got prepared and went ahead and pulled up my sidebar PDFs. So, okay, let me put a link in the chat for the Discord for Spencer. You can also search for Law Squirrel, but Nightbot should be posting the link here so you can join. We have a great Discord. It's awesome. It's just like the chat here. Yeah, so far, right. And I know Fender said it in the Discord, and I agreed. Like day 15, things really will. I mean, I can't say exactly what you will. It's great because you're not biased and you're watching it for the first time. It's really awesome. I really appreciate having that perspective because so many of us have watched it lots of times. But it'll be interesting to see how things change for you, DSN, as we start watching day 15. Because I know for, again, a lot of people, it was kind of a turning point. So, so Spencer says, that's when it gets juicy. Yup, it sure does. You're very welcome. Very, very welcome. So yeah, so I'm going to run so I can get to some students and prepare for all the other things. And we will, I think, it'll be a nice break. Like, I'm so glad DSN reached the part where Amber's on the stand because it's the perfect time for a palate cleanser, right? Like for the weekend, we can do these Friday night and we'll do Saturday night special as well, if you guys want tomorrow. And yeah, the body, right? And maybe I'll even tell you guys some of my specific stories from when I watched the trial in real time when it was happening, when she was on the stand, because I have some very specific memories that will probably come up even if I don't try to. So we'll see. So anyway, love you guys. Y'all are the best. Squirrel Crew for life, yo. Faux life. And I'll see you guys hopefully here in a couple hours. And I'm going to go ahead and roll the outro. Love y'all.